Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back to bring you guys another deck profile for you all. So, of course, what I have to present to you guys, well, as expected from a long-time Kagura player, is, of course, my Perdition Dragon deck. Basically in the form of Dragonic Overlord the Great and Dragonood, because, you know, apparently that's what all the meta Kagura cool kids are doing nowadays, I guess. But yeah, I was actually able to take this deck to my third annual local championship held by my good buddy Juan Mango. It's called the DMV Dynasty Cup, DMV for DC, Maryland, Virginia. It's just a local championship that we've been, doing for the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. I guess kind of like the ARG events, but it's obviously for us. And I was actually able to make my third consecutive top with this deck. I was able to make top 8 with this deck. Unfortunately, I did lose in top 8 to my good buddy Zag Zag with his Spike Brothers. You know, darn him and those spikes. You know, spikes are strong. I play them, of course. It's a really good match we had. Although I'd say game 3, you know, I guess there was a little bit of Vanguard luck to it, but nonetheless, we still had a great game. I had a great time, and really happy with how this deck turned out to be. And although I didn't really have too much play testing necessarily beforehand, because obviously we held the tournament like almost right after these cards came out, I didn't have too much time to play test thoroughly. But you know, surprisingly, the deck, these two cards work in pretty good combination with each other, a lot better than I expected. So I'll talk a little bit more in detail in a bit. So yeah, without further ado, guys, let's actually get started. So of course, guys, for starters, we have our Red Pulse Draco Kid, always a very trusty starter for the sake of consistency. Now, there are some other starters you can use. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's like Petal Fairy Dragon or something, but it's like upon Legion, you give your Vanguard the ability of when it hits, retire a rearguard. I think it's a really good solid card, especially with the combination of the Great, but Red Pulse, just like I said, is for consistency purposes. And most importantly, what I like a lot about this Grade 3 lineup for this deck is that your Grade 3s aren't necessarily ever dead for you, because the fact is that they both involve a Persona skill, Dragonood of course being a Persona Blast from your hand to execute a skill, and the Great secondary ability actually utilizes extra copies of himself. You know, Red Pulse will always have some kind of use for you, and all your Grade 3s, like I said, are never dead. So I think he's the ideal starter for the sake of consistency, like I always say. The next up for Grade 3s, we have our 4 Dragonic Overlord the Great, of course, and 4 Perdition Dragon Vortex Dragonood. Now, ideally, I do prefer to start off with the Great. Just to try and take advantage of his main skill throughout the game to wear out my opponent, and then kind of use Dragonood to kind of go in for the kill. That's kind of the main combination I try to go out game by game. But Overlord the Great, what he does is, while he is in Legion, you can, at the end of the battle that he attacks a rear guard, you can counterblast 1, discard 2 cards from hand, and then restand him. So what I like with him, of course, he's a restanding Vanguard, but he really does take after the original Dragonic Overlord, where you can attack a rearguard and then, you know, restand and then still attack the Vanguard, with the exception that he doesn't have to hit. So I really like it just because it still allows me to attack my opponent's rearguards, which is something I like to do a lot of times, especially playing Kagura. So it allows me to, you know, maybe get rid of any problem cards in the front row, but just being able to still attack a rearguard while still being able to attack the Vanguard to go for damage, it's definitely nice. It's definitely a nice advantage you can definitely build turn by turn if you're able to get off the Legion a little bit early on. So I really like utilizing the restanding skill early on, like I said, just to be able to still kind of pressure the, still get out damage to my opponent while still attacking rearguard. So it's a nice way to wear off my opponent. If I'm able to, you know, nail any crits early on while my opponent's maybe at 2-3 damage, I usually just give it all to my Vanguard, because either my opponent no guards and risks dying to extra crits or just taking a lot of damage, or I end up baiting early Sentinels or a lot of defensive resources that my opponent may not likely have later on when I drop Dragonood later to kind of, you know, go for that push. So Dragonood, of course, what he does is, while he is in Legion, you can counterblast 2, discard a copy of a unit in your Vanguard circle, which of course includes him and his mate, and you give your opponent 1 damage and retire 2 of their rear guards. Now, the damage you do give them does nullify any triggers they hit, hence I guess people like to call it the burn heal. So Dragonood, what I like a lot about Dragonood is that it just makes it so that you can make up for any lost damage that you kind of maybe missed out on. For instance, of course, with Kagero, I usually like to wear out my opponent's rear guard, so a lot of times I am usually going after the rear guards. I'm not necessarily going for damage or prioritizing damage because I know I have Dragonute that can, clean up on damage for me. Also, obviously, if your opponent, sack heals, when they're at 5 damage, you can kind of put them back to 5 and still try and kill them anyway, which I think is kind of hilarious to do. But yeah, I like it, because there's definitely a lot of uses you can really utilize with Dragonute to really max out the potential of this card. Like I said, you don't have to rush out damage. It allows you to, maybe focus a little bit more on your opponent's rear guards, maybe if they have a lot of field presence early on in the game, knowing that you have a way to kind of push that, to clean up on damage, like I said. But another thing too I like is that, if you're still facing any limit break decks, like let's say Metal Boards with Daikaiser, it allows you to not really rush your opponent to Limit Break 4 right away, knowing that you can easily go put them from 3 to 4 automatically, so you can easily put them in a situation where they can't really necessarily no guard you. So that's just a few ways to really max out the potential of Dragonute. But yeah, he's a very, very powerful card and definitely one of the best artworks I'd say for Kagero. Really like this artwork a lot. So yep, that's it for grade 3s. Now moving on to grade 2s. Sorry guys, that was a little more organized. So of course you have your 4 Whirlwind Dragon, the mate for Dragonute, and your 12k attacker for Perditions. When I first initially played the deck, I kind of try to conserve these in my hand for the sake of Persona Blasting, but I found out you don't necessarily have to do that, just because, I mean, you have obviously 8 copies in the deck, but it kind of just depends on the situation that you kind of read on, how the game is playing out. But I try not to call them frequently, but definitely don't hesitate if you just want to get some attacks in early on, or if you just need to get some beaters out there. Definitely don't hesitate to call these if that is the priority for yourself. So it's really up to you as the player to decide what's the best situation for yourself. So, but yeah, definitely got to play 4 of those. Then you got to play 4 Perdition Dragon Menace Laser. Definitely a very solid card for this deck. What he does is when he's placed on rear guard circle, Counterblast 1, retire a unit in the same column as him. So it's really good, of course. It's basically a Berserk Dragon at a discount with a little bit restriction, but being able to just kill a unit for free with 1 Counterblast is always nice. You definitely got to be careful. The fact is that obviously he kills in the same column, so you gotta be kind of, wary of the placement of your units, because early on, if you make a column on the left side, then most likely your opponent may call units to the right side, so, you kind of have to just be wary of that, because it is the same column only, but nonetheless, still a very effective card. Then, of course, you have 3 of the great mate of Neoflame. Now, I do contemplate on running 4 of him and cutting 1 Menace Laser, because Neoflame does have a few purposes in the deck outside of his own skill, but his skill reads as, when he's placed on rearguard circle, he gains the red text ability of, whenever a unit is sent to the drop zone in the same column as him, Counterblast 1, retire a unit in the same column. So that includes being attacked. So if you attack with the Great in the same column as him, then you can still utilize a skill. And of course he is a target for the Great secondary skill of retiring a copy of a card in your Vanguard circle to retire another rear guard. So he definitely works great in combination with the Great. But honestly though, on paper, when it comes to taking out a column, Menace Laser kind of does the same thing as Neoflame, because if you drop Menace Laser, take out the booster, and then attack the front row, that's probably a 9k, you're essentially taking away the same cards that Neoflame does. But Neoflame does add some extra pressure to your opponent, because it kind of forces out unnecessary guards, because your opponent doesn't like seeing this card go off. And like I said, it's another target for the Great to go for some different combos in terms of retiring. So that's kind of why I'm contemplating running the 4th one, but definitely either or. I mean, both. This lineup worked very well for me. Now, moving on to grade 1s. Sorry guys, just checking my camera. Of course, you have your 4 perfect guards in the form of Wyvern Guard Bari. Definitely got to keep it classic here. Plus, I had these, since day 1 of Kagero, so these hold some sentimental value for me. Then you have your 4 copies. I'm just going to call him Lasso Dragon, because I think it's a cooler name. He's basically your unflipper for the deck. So, whenever he's on rear guard circle, whenever you retire a unit in the same column as him, you Soul Blast 1 and you unflip 1. So it's really meant to work in combination of Menace Laser, which is why I do play 4 of him. To basically make it so that you can retire for the cost of Soul Blast 1. I like it too because it is Soul Blast 1, so if you're short a card or 2 for Legion, it allows you to get another card to the drop zone as well. So yeah, these 2 cards work very well in combination with themselves, and also Dragonood as well. So there are times where, I'll have like a Neoflame with him, and then I Dragonood, and I only have 2 Counterblasts, but it allows me to still use Neoflame to, use Dragonood, use his ability to unflip, and then I use Neoflame to kill another card. So yeah, for just Counterblast 2, you can pretty much kill 3 units, which is really nice. So definitely a really good card for the deck. And then of course, for I guess the draw power, you have your 3 Gojo and 3 Wyvern. Wyvern's definitely very important because that Soul Blast 2 can definitely be really huge, just because, it's really ideal to Legion as soon as possible if you can, which is why I was contemplating running a 4th one, but I like the Lasso Dragon a lot, so really couldn't find the room. And of course you gotta run Gojo. It's a Legion deck, drop and draw, definitely withstood the test of time in terms of his very basic but very effective skill. And then for triggers, of course you gotta run the 4 Tar rare ones, because Kai hits like 4 of them. And there are situations where, I needed to crit my opponent and I actually revealed the Tars, so definitely got to run the Tars. So I have 7 crit, 5 draw, 4 heal. I definitely like to still keep the 4 Gatling Claw because, like I always like to say, they're starters that just need to die. So definitely got to run the 4. But yeah, I found 7-5 to be good because it gives you more opportunities to draw into your Persona cards, draw into more options for yourself, and you have ways to pretty much ditch your cards as well. So with the form of the Great and Gojo. So yeah, there you have it, guys. That is my deck for you all. Hope you guys enjoyed that. As always, feel free to leave a comment down below with any questions, concerns, and such, and definitely I'll try to get some matches up for you guys. Other than that, guys, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.